have a speaker joining us named Natalie Schmitt. And Natalie is an empathetic ecologist, a conservation geneticist, and a documentary presenter. And she's deeply passionate about protecting biodiversity using hard science and public education and community empowerment. She's going to take us on an adventure today from Antarctic blue whales to snow leopards to caribou to learn about how some of the very cool ways that DNA tools can help us study and protect rare and elusive species. And she's also developing this leading edge technology to detect DNA from minute biological samples in real time with error-free and low cost and easy to use. So I, for one, am excited to hear about that. Natalie, welcome to the Global BioFest.
Gosh, Lizzie, hey, it's so nice to meet you and it's so nice to be here. I'm actually speaking from Canada. I know I'm an Australian living in Canada, so that's where the confusion lies maybe.
That's all right. And with all the different species that you're studying, you never know where you might be.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I'm so grateful to be here and excited to tell our audience about my very eclectic journey as a conservation geneticist.
Yes, we're excited to hear it.
I'm so grateful to be part of this Global BioFest, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to you a little bit about my very eclectic journey as a conservation geneticist. And actually, that's the beautiful thing about working with DNA is it can take you on so many different avenues of conservation. And like everyone that's attending this conference, I've always had such a profound love for nature and really wanted to devote my life to protecting it. But I've had to take a few, twists and turns, changes in direction and focus to work out how best to do that. So in a past life, I actually started off in animal behavior, studying these very happy little wallabies. I'm sure you've heard of these guys, the quokka. That live in the southwest of Western Australia, which is where I'm from. And I even gave up 5 years of science to pursue documentary film as a documentary film presenter, because I thought that I might be able to make a greater impact in conservation by doing that. But it wasn't until I discovered the beautiful potential, the amazing potential of genetic tools that I really found my passion. So what are genetic tools? So genetic tools are basically DNA sequences that are unique to an individual, a population, a species. And they can tell us lots about animals, plants, pathogens by the remains that they leave behind. So fecal samples, skin, bone, hair, saliva, basically anything containing DNA. And using these tools, we can assess abundance. We can measure connectivity between populations. We can monitor biodiversity or biodiversity loss, and we can even track individual movement. And I just love how versatile this biological tool is, because I'm just interested in so many different things. I don't know exactly what I want to study, so it suits me very well. And these tools are very useful for helping us to learn more about rare and elusive species or animals that are really difficult to study. And I'm particularly interested in those rare and elusive species that live at the planet's extremes. So as a kid, I was deeply inspired by my great-grandfather, Charlie Sandell, who was part of Sir Douglas Mawson's Antarctic expedition from 1911 to 1914. And I was so lucky to be able to follow in his footsteps, at least going to Antarctica with a PhD on the population genetic structure of humpback whales in the South Pacific and Australia with the Australian Antarctic Division. And I then went on to study the largest animal that's ever lived. Does anyone know what that is? That's right, the Antarctic blue whale. And this was an absolute dream come true for me. I mean, virtually nothing is known about this almost mythical creature that was reduced to less than 300 individuals in the mid-1960s as a result of commercial whaling. And I became involved in a study that looked to identify individuals using skin biopsy samples as well as photo ID to see if we could get an accurate estimate of their circumpolar abundance in the Southern Ocean. Now, trying to find an Antarctic blue whale in the vast Southern Ocean is a little bit trying to find a needle in an ocean full of haystacks. It's really, really difficult. But luckily, they vocalize very loudly and at very low frequencies. So we can actually detect them from over 1,000 kilometers away, which continues to blow my mind. So at the Australian Antarctic Division, we have these very clever acousticians that developed this amazing methodology where they throw these microphone arrays over the side of the ship. And then when an Antarctic blue whale is detected from 3 of those microphone arrays that we call sonobuoys, then they can make a triangulation and actually place the ship within 2 nautical miles of that individual that's vocalizing. And us observers on the deck can easily see that massive tall blow on the horizon. It's phenomenal that we can hone in on an animal from over 1,000 kilometers away. And as part of this research, we actually made some really amazing kind of non-intentional discoveries as well as intentional discoveries. So while we were testing the methodology of the southeast coast of Australia, we literally bumped into one of the rarest whale species in the world. So this species has only previously been described from dead specimens and a small handful of sightings, and we managed to get photos and video. This is Shepherd's beaked whale. So amazing. And in the Ross Sea, we discovered this massive feeding aggregation of over 100 Antarctic blue whales that were just gorging themselves on krill. And I can tell you, this was one of the most amazing things I've ever witnessed in my life. I mean, imagine being in the middle of these giants feeding. It was incredible. And then we became the first team of people to successfully deploy a satellite tag on an Antarctic blue whale. And for that, we had to get up really, really close. Now you can see by this photograph the sheer size of this animal compared to us. And let me tell you, we're still actually quite a distance away from this individual. So they're even bigger than you can see here. And I want to play you a video clip. I'm hoping that this works and you can hear the sound of that exact moment that we deployed that tag. Okay. So this is the culmination of everything that we've worked so hard for. This is 2 years of work. We're excited, but we're also absolutely petrified because so much can go wrong in this very moment. We have to get the tag, the skin biopsy, the photograph all at once, otherwise we miss our opportunity. We start to see the animal surface on the right-hand side and we accelerate and woo! Bang! Whoa! Oh, that clip still gives me goosebumps. I'm like shaking as I watch it. And you can see the biopsy dart that my colleague is holding, and it has a little skin sample at the end of it. It literally bounced off the whale and landed in the boat, and that absolutely never, ever happens. We usually have to scoop it up in the water. So this particular animal, we tracked it for 74 days and it traveled 5,000 kilometers. And what's really interesting is this guy liked to hang out around the sea ice. And there's no coincidence that krill also like to hang out around the sea ice. So this guy was very hungry over its 74 days that we managed to track it. And as far as obtaining a circumpolar abundance estimate, we discovered that because we weren't able to collect as many samples as we wanted, simply because we had no idea how many samples we'd be able to collect, it means our estimate is not very accurate. So our mathematicians at the Australian Antarctic Division are in the process of designing new surveys that can take this into account and allow us to obtain more accurate estimates. But as a ballpark figure, there are about 3,000 Antarctic blue whales in the Southern Ocean. So they're recovering quite well, but they're still considered endangered and we need to protect them. But it was in the moments that I was in this little boat, the quiet moments when we're sitting in the sea ice, it's so still, a sea fog rolls in and the ship is obscured and you feel like you're the only people left on the planet. And rather than being a scary feeling, it is the most beautiful feeling. It's that moment where you're in complete awe of everything. You feel connected to nature and everything. And it was that moment that I thought to myself, wow, if everyone could experience this type of awe for nature, then the whole world would want to protect it. And so I started to mull over this. And this was a point in my life that I then became interested in studying snow leopards. So from pole to peak, I've always had such a deep love and interest in snow leopards. They're such a fascinating and intriguing species. And I've always loved this part of the world, particularly Nepal. So snow leopards range from across the Himalayas, from Afghanistan through to China, Afghanistan through to China, and like Antarctic blue whales, they're very, very difficult to find, and we don't yet have an accurate estimate of abundance for this reason, and also because the range countries, the 12 range countries that spanned the snow leopard's range, use different methodologies to estimate abundance. So we need to make that methodology consistent. And luckily now we have a way of making those estimates more accurate. So we combine DNA analysis, so with fecal sampling, with camera trap surveys, and we can obtain a much more accurate estimate of abundance. And I was lucky enough to be involved in some preliminary surveys around the Kingdom of Mustang in Nepal about 5 or 6 years ago with the Centre for Molecular Dynamics. Now, I thought that Antarctic blue whales were difficult to find, but these guys, okay, let me play this clip. These guys like to live above about 3,500 meters. They like steep terrain. They prefer cliff edges. So of course we have to find the fecal samples from these areas. And let me tell you, each step in these low oxygen levels is an effort and a half, particularly for someone like me. Being an Australian, I like being at sea level. It's arduous. But once we find a sample that we think belongs to a snow leopard, and by the way, these samples are definitely not snow leopard, they're probably blue sheep. In order to verify that it is snow leopard, we need to collect those samples and send it off to a lab for analysis. And this is actually one of the biggest challenges with snow leopard field work when we're fecal sampling, is because it takes so much effort to collect these samples. And often we'll collect samples that we think are from snow leopard, only to have them analysed in a lab and discover they're actually from common leopard or wolf. So you can imagine it can be a huge waste of time and resources. And I was lucky enough to get to spend some time with the local communities in these areas that are immensely challenged, because often they have snow leopards or other predators taking their livestock, and their livestock is their livelihood. And it's not surprising that when I spoke to them, that most of the members of these communities, particularly the older generation, just wish that snow leopards never existed. And in really desperate moments, they've had to kill snow leopards, thinking that they are responsible for taking their livestock. So this was quite profound for me. This hit me quite hard, because I realized just how important local communities are to successful conservation. I thought, gosh, we need to empower these communities. We need to help to lift them or lift themselves out of poverty. And we need to ensure that conservation efforts are actually going to benefit them rather than hinder them. So I then started working with this incredible not-for-profit foundation called Panji. So Panji is led by a Nepalese professor, Dr. Som Ali, who has lived and worked in a lot of these communities. And Panji have developed this amazing community-led savings and credit program, conservation education program, mostly with the kids to teach them about their local ecosystem. And of course, the kids then go on to teach the parents. And then training local youth, particularly women, in how to use conservation tools so that they can contribute directly to our global snow leopard abundance estimates. So this has been an amazing experience for me, and I feel very grateful to work with these guys. But around this time, I then made a discovery that changed my life for good, I think. I stumbled across a scientific paper that had been developed by a biomedical lab at McMaster University. They developed this very simple, elegant, paper-based biosensor for the detection of bacteria in food and water samples. And I kind of had this eureka moment where I thought, if this could be adapted to species detection, then the impact of conservation would be absolutely profound, and particularly on empowering communities like these ones to be able to contribute to global conservation efforts. So I literally gave up my career as a whale scientist, and I left my family, my friends, my relationship, and on a small amount of money, I moved here to Canada to work with this biomedical lab to see if we could adapt the methodology for species detection. And that was 5 years ago. I get a lot of people asking me, why would you take such a risk? Why would you make such a sacrifice? It's because our ability to detect wildlife from their genetic samples, whether it be fecal material, skin, bone, hair, as I mentioned, is still largely lab-based. And this is slow, it's expensive, and it requires considerable expertise, which effectively eliminates most of the world from contributing to global conservation efforts. Many developing countries simply do not have these types of laboratory facilities, and some developing countries can't even send samples out of the country legally to be analysed. And this has had big consequences in conservation. So the illegal wildlife trade, so this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It has huge ecological, economic, and national security consequences. But it's the inability of customs officers, anti-poaching squads, you name it, to be able to distinguish between a legal and illegal product that has become one of the biggest issues in the enforcement and prosecution of the illegal wildlife trade. And then we have what I mentioned, so monitoring endangered species in the wild through fecal sampling. Like snow leopards, more often than not, samples are incorrectly identified and it's not discovered until it's analysed in a lab. This can be a huge waste of time and resources. We need to be able to identify those samples on the spot. Wildlife pathogens. So if there's anything that we've learned from this pandemic, it's how important it is to be able to identify or detect these pathogens on the spot so that we're able to stop them in their tracks. And as I mentioned before, an issue that's very close to my heart. Unless we can empower everyday people and communities, then we're effectively around conservation, then we're effectively removing the most important component, in my opinion, to global conservation efforts. So over the past 5 years, I've been working with McMaster University and the University of Calgary to develop a very simple technology that addresses these issues. It is affordable, easy to use, portable, and requires no sequencing, requires no heating. It effectively works in a very similar way to a COVID rapid test. So what happens is you'll get a yes or no answer. You'll get a color change, basically validating whether a sample belongs to your target species. And the device, like you see here, will consist of a platform with a digital display where data can be uploaded to a centralized database. The reagents are actually dried and printed onto these test strips, which makes the whole technology, as I said, easy to use, affordable, and quick, accessible, quick, portable, accurate. Now, we're still a couple of years away from having a prototype ready. I realize that developing technology can take longer than you think it's going to take, and it doesn't help to have a pandemic thrown in the middle of it. But it's been such a profound life change and immensely challenging, but it continues to be such a fascinating and rewarding journey for me. As cheesy as it sounds, I'm a firm believer that if you follow your heart, it will never lead you astray, and it will take you to places that your mind never thought possible. So I just wanted to end by showing you a clip about our technology and why it's so important. I hope the sound works, but yeah, here we go.
What will you be willing to do for an idea you know will be a game changer for conservation?
Natalie, maybe just turn the volume up on your end.
Sorry?
Can you make sure on the video that the volume is up on the video?
Oh.
On that right, yep, all the way up to the top. We're not hearing too much of it.
And faster and less expensive.
One more thing, can you just unplug your headphones?
Oh.
I immediately was struck by how relevant the technology is, what is the incredible potential of this technology, and I'm really clear that this is the future.
Please join us. There's never been a greater urgency.
And yes, thanks. I would love to acknowledge the funders and the contributors, but there's just such a huge list of people that are helping me on this journey that I'm so incredibly grateful for. But thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you all. I'm so grateful.
Yes, well, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Did you hear that? Did the sound come through?
We heard the second, once your headphones popped out, we heard it.
Oh, what a shame. How weird. Okay.
Is it on, do you guys have a website yet by any chance?
Yes, we do.
Great. We can pop up the website so people can take a look and take a peek. Is the video on the website as well?
Oh, yes, yes, it is.
Awesome. What's the website?
It's www.wildtechdna.com.
Okay, awesome. We'll pop that up on that look.
Yep, that's perfect.
Excellent. So people can go ahead and take a look at that. A question for your technology. You said it's probably going to be about 2 years before it comes out. And are you targeting certain species that you're going to kind of test the prototypes on ahead of time, or what does that next phase look like?
That's a really good question. So at the moment, we've got funding to develop this technology initially for caribou fecal detection. We're lucky enough to have funding from industry because here in Canada, caribou are a very important species. It's essential for industry to ensure they're not impacting caribou migratory routes. So this type of technology will allow them to make very quick management decisions. But we're currently looking for funding to expand. The next phase will be expanding the technology to all the big cat species. And that's what I'm really excited about because that's my passion. And we're partnering with the South African government and Wildlife Conservation Society. And yeah, we have a lot of interest with the big cats. So yeah, hoping to get there soon.
That is amazing. I can't wait to stay tuned for a couple of years from now to see how it all works out. How do you, I know you said it's on a paper test strip, but do you put it into a fecal sample or do like a saliva swab? How does that part actually work?
Yeah, it's a really good question as well. So the idea would be to take a sample. So let's say snow leopard fecal sample. We'd take a little bit of that fecal material, put it in a tube, allow it to sit for a little while in this buffer solution. You'd then apply it to the paper surface, and then the reaction would occur. And in half an hour, you'll have either a color change or no color change.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, it's very exciting, and your life has been definitely inspiring for people who are watching and myself, and so many pivots that you've made, but they're definitely connected. You can see your passion coming through for nature and conservation and wanting to make conservation accessible to everyone for all species. So thank you so much for joining us today, Natalie, and look forward to learning more about WildTech DNA when it comes out and hits the market.
I look forward to that too, and thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope everyone sticks around for some exciting speakers to follow.
Yes, well, thank you so much and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, you too.